Friends, please be seated. Man, how many times have I said myself, "Oh, Lord, thank you that I am not like him." Some of you are going to soon go to our diocesan convention. I won't be there this year because Karen and Amelia and I are going back east to bury my father-in-law, David, whom many of you love. And I'm glad for it because I'll tell you what, there's nothing like going to diocesan convention as a clergy member because all that I'm thinking is, "Oh, Lord God, thank you so much that I am not like him." In this week's gospel reading, Jesus tells us a parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous. I love to trust in myself. I love it. It doesn't work out for me so well, but I love it. Two men go up to the temple to pray. One is a Pharisee. Let's call him the rector. He is a religious insider who serves a vital role in the leadership of the life of his community. In the guise of a heartfelt thank you, a prayer of heartfelt gratitude, he makes a personal progress report to God, just loud enough so that everyone can hear. "I thank you that I am not like these other people, thieves, rogues, adulterers." And then he humble brags about his pious lifestyle. "I even give 10% right off the top, even before my contribution to my 403B, even before I pay my taxes, I do it, and I do it faithfully. And I fast twice a week." The second man might be a little more familiar to us. He is a tax collector. He's a collaborator with the Roman Empire. He is a traitor to his own people. And he stands far off. And he can barely be heard by anyone because he is prostrate on the ground, face to the dirt, beating his chest, and he refuses to look up even to heaven, and he prays just one prayer: "Lord God, be merciful to me, a sinner." But Jesus concludes at the end of this parable that it is the tax collector and not the Pharisee, not the good rector, who goes home justified. That is, who goes home with a clear conscience before God. Jesus says, and this is from the Message version by Eugene Peterson, "If you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you're content to be simply yourself, you will become more than yourself." Now, I don't know too many people who like the word sinner. It's kind of out of fashion these days, right? Many Christians, particularly those of us who have adopted a more sophisticated approach to faith, read here, a sophisticated Episcopal priest, Episcopal parishioner, a Episcopal Pharisee. Well, we actively dislike the word sinner. We use all kinds of other words, right, to kind of get around that, soften that up, take the rough edges off of it. It's our brokenness, right? We're just off the mark. We associate sin with sermons from many, many years ago. We associate it with shame, with self-punishment, and creepy sermons today by pejorative preachers about hellfire and eternal consequences. Too often, sinner is a word that frightens us away from relationship with God rather than drawing us closer to God. We also distrust the word because we understand how easily it is manipulated to justify one moral or philosophical or political agenda over another. In some churches, sinners are people who support abortion rights or marriage equality, while those who ravage our planet and systemically exploit the poor, they get a pass. In other churches, sins include hawkish foreign policy, capital punishment, corporate greed, but certainly not abject social media addiction or the objectification of others as chattel to be trafficked, or even the toxicity of cancel culture. In this week's gospel reading, Jesus is not letting up, and he doesn't shy away from the capital S sin word. He insists on it. He tells the story surrounded as a context about sin. He insists on calling out and naming the sinfulness for what it is and for who it affects. He insists on the healing, cleansing, emancipating power of honest confession. Why? Because honest confession makes room for healing. Honest confession tells the truth, which is that I am the S in mess. I am the S in this beautiful, messy world we live in. I am made in God's divine image, but I am mired in this human penchant for broken relationships, broken dreams. And it is so profound that it wars against its own salvation. I fight against myself and against God's grace and love, just like a drowning man struggles against his rescuer. To choose the word sinner here, to choose the word sinner in my prayer life is to insist on something more intense, more clarifying than, I made some mistakes, Lord. I'm only human. To use the word sinner, as our prayer book clearly does, is to refuse the arrogant us-them divide of the Pharisee. Ooh, I'm so glad it's not me. Woohoo! To use the word sinner is to recognize my solidarity with my fellow human sinners, right? Just like me. It is to acknowledge that I too am utterly lost, utterly inadequate, and bereft but for the grace of God. Now note that the tax collector here in this parable doesn't name any specific sins. He doesn't boast about what he does right or about what he's left undone. No, this tax collector, he goes so much deeper. He names a brokenness that is cellular level, a brokenness that inhabits the deepest parts of our being. God, be merciful to me, a sinner. He names it because it's killing him. He names it because it's killing him, because it's a 1,000-pound gorilla sitting on his chest. It's the incessant ringing in his ears. It's the pounding of his heart in his chest, that nagging feeling that maybe today he'll be exposed as an imposter. Whatever it is, it's killing him. So let's just check in with ourselves real quick. Pause for just a moment. Right about now, you might be perhaps skin crawling with all this sin talk. Maybe your Episcopal Anglican sensibilities are ruffled a little bit. Maybe in your mind you've already moved on. Maybe you've wrapped yourself in the comfort and justification of God's unreasonable forgiveness. Okay. Maybe you've stopped listening altogether. It's happened. Maybe you've given your attention to the anesthetizing distraction of your Apple Watch. If you're uncomfortable with all of this sin talk, if you're tempted to over-intellectualize or avoid the topic altogether, consider this. Is this church, St. Patrick's, is this church safe for sinners to tell their messy, vulnerable truths? Does our common life and worship make room for the abject cries of the wretched? Or is church just another place that we go to shine, to show off, and hope that nobody takes this Jesus guy and his teaching about honest confession too seriously? You don't have to answer just now. Just consider. Consider that sin is anything that interferes with the opening of my whole heart and soul to God, to others, to creation itself, and to my own self. Sin, consider, is estrangement. It is disconnection. It is isolation. Sin is apathetic. It's careless. It's antagonistic. It's competition. It's antagonistic towards being vulnerable, transparent. Sin is the opposite of creativity. It's the opposite of abundance. It's the opposite of possibility, the opposite of flourishing. Consider that sin is a refusal to become fully human. What Jesus exposes in his parable is the Pharisees' compulsive need to avoid his broken inner life, and he does it by behavior modification. He looks right. He does all the right things. He checks off all the right boxes. He decides who is in and who is out, and it's based on his own narrow justification and definition of purity and piety. And here, let us not deceive ourselves, friends, or judge our poor Pharisee too harshly, lest we forget that we are all the S in this beautiful mess. Don't we ourselves fixate on expressions of religiosity that we can put on display to impress others, or at least keep them from noticing the mess, instead of humbly cultivating the secret and hidden life of God, like a mustard seed that is planted deep within our own souls? Don't we allow ourselves to scorn? If you've been on social media, you're not exempt. Oftentimes disguised as righteous indignation, to take root and grow in our hearts until our love sours and the empathy withers. This parable, it may be simple, but it is not simplistic. And it should give us pause, especially if we cradle Christians. if it's possible to do all manner of impressive religious things and get these fabulous drag shows going, still walk away shackled by our sin, something's not right. It is possible to allow our piety to deaden us to God's call and God's sending. It is possible to pray without revealing anything within us that needs redemption. It is possible to practice an outwardly beautiful Christianity that freezes us in time, that makes us stingy and small-minded, cowardly, anxious, and that makes us irrelevant to the generations that will come after us. It strips away our joy and robs us of our peace. It causes us, in Jesus' chilling words, to honor God with our lips, but to worship him in vain. In the end, Jesus' parable doesn't wrap everything up in a nice, beautiful little bow. There is no happily ever after here. The tax collector went forth and sinned no more. Oh, don't we wish to hear that? But that is not what it says. In fact, we have no idea what the man does once he leaves the temple. Is his heart and life transformed from the inside out? Or does he end up just back at the temple a week later, just as full of remorse as he was before? In other words, there is no indication that he does anything to justify God's lavish mercy towards him. And that is precisely the point. The lavish mercy of God cannot be earned. You cannot justify yourself. The lavish of mercy of God must be received. In the words of Rowan Williams, confession, honest confession, is the place where human defensiveness and self-sufficiency are stripped away, opening up our empty hands to receive the abundant mercy of God. Friends, without the daily practice of honest confession, well, we cannot become what God has intended for us. Rather, as Dietrich Bonhoeffer so pointedly wrote nearly 100 years ago, without honest confession, he who is alone with his sin is utterly alone. Two men go up to the temple to pray. God hears both of their prayers. One leaves as utterly alone as he came. But the other's honest and desperate prayer of confession leaves him free to be more himself than he's ever been before. Now, ain't that good news?